Hi all, hope you can hear me. Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining this first explained session of the new school year. We're going to wait another 2 minutes because there are still some people joining. So I will start our corporate movie once again, and after that we'll start the session. Okay, hello everyone. It's 10:04 right now, so I'm just going to start with the session. So good morning again. Thank you for joining our OT Security Explained webinar. For those who do not know our explained concept, maybe a quick recap. So explained sessions are short webinars where we will touch upon technology from a high level point of view. And our goal is to provide you with an overview of the basics to give you a head start to discover the concepts on your own. So as you may have noticed, today's topic is all about OT security. I'm Jette Smeyers. I'm security engineer at Exclusive Networks. Exclusive Networks, hope you all know, is a value-added distributor. So we focus on cybersecurity and cloud solutions. One of my main tasks is being a pre-sales engineer for Fortinet, one of our biggest vendors. And because of their recent and rough focus on OT security, I will be your host today. I've also included Quinten's name on the slides. Quinten Test is our business development manager for Nozomi. Nozomi Networks is a vendor with a pure focus on OT security and visibility. So just so you know who you can contact after this presentation. Know that you're all on mute. You can use the chat or the questions box if you have questions. I have until 10:40, 10:45. We'll see where we end. And I will do the questions at the end because, yeah, that's just easier. Before we start, I would like to go over the agenda. As this is an explained session, we will give you a high-level overview of operational technology and the security concepts surrounding the topic. If you have any deep dive questions, please consider sending us a message so we can set up a meeting with one of our vendors. these people breathe and talk OT, so they will be the perfect guides to consult if you have any specific requirements. For today, we will focus on the basics concerning OT. So what is it? What is the difference with IT? The conversion with IT and Industry 4.0, some topologies, and then we will touch upon the security aspect of operational technology. What are the challenges and how can we securely manage these type of networks? So the reason why we thought OT security would be a good topic to kick off this new school year is because we see that companies face more and more challenges because of the conversions between IT and OT. Gartner last year made a prediction saying that by 2025, 75% of OT security solutions will be delivered via multifunction platforms interoperable with IT security solutions. In human language, that just means that security solutions will focus more and more on securing both IT and OT at the same time, because in fact, our OT environments are also changing and converging as well. But before we start with the convergence, I would like to have a look at what OT actually stands for. And this is the definition of Gartner, because OT, or operational technology, is in fact a relatively young name. Well, relatively, it's invented by Gartner in 2006. And at that point in time, it was used to describe mechanisms in electrical power grids. But of course, the OT concept is absolutely not new. They are around for years and years and years. What stands out in the definition is that it detects and causes a change, and this is very important. Operational technology is hardware and software that detects and causes a change, and this on industrial equipment, assets, processes, and events. And that's very important because we're talking about industrial equipment, assets. So we can summarize this more or less obscure definition as indicated on the left-hand side of the slide. So it's really about the physical world. It is about interaction with the physical world. That's really important. Now that we have defined OT, let's have a look at IT. Well, IT, there we're going to talk about data. So it is the generation and management of data throughout and between organizations. So information and technology, information is data. It gives you tools to play with things that are not real. Well, not real, actually, just that you cannot see or feel the triggers and actions unless you visualize it. And that's completely different compared to OT. So in short, OT networks communicate with physical machines, with the physical world, and IT networks deal with information and data. With OT, you can feel the heat, smell the smoke, monitor the pressure, you can see a valve opening, and if you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, maybe even feel electricity flowing because you opened the relay or something. So these are really physical things. Examples for T, a pump which is controlled by a system, large robotic systems, but also a smart door lock, for example, can be OT. IT is quite straightforward. I think that you are all using an IT device right now to watch this webinar. So these are our computers, domain controllers, applications, maybe in the cloud, data centers that we're using. IT and OT networks, they have or better said, they can operate in more or less the same environment, but they have completely different goals. OT makes a factory running. Therefore, networks need to be 100% reliable and up at all times. IT, on the other hand, yeah, it doesn't matter if you have a glitch in your webinar, for example. So that's not that important to have that 100% reliability and uptime. If we are going to talk about OT, also some other terminology can come into mind. For example, SCADA, RTUs, PLCs, as you can see on the slide here. To define these, or to give you a little bit of context of what these are, we will focus on ICS, Industrial Control Systems. Because basically, if we're talking about OT environments, then we're talking about environments that contain industrial control systems, ICS. And examples of such an ICS is, for example, SCADA, RTUs, PLCs. So these are examples of these industrial control systems. Now, you see the word convergence on our slide. We started with convergence. Well, let's have a look at why the border between IT and OT is blurring. And this brings us essentially to Industry 4.0. So the fourth industrial revolution. So technologists and economists say that there have been already 3 industrial revolutions. The first one, which is the orange one, as you can see, was basically driven by the invention of steam power. The second one in gray was largely driven by electricity and harnessing of it. The third industrial revolution was more or less driven by computers. And the fourth industrial revolution, which is happening right now, is going to be characterized by the convergence of information and technology and operational technology. We call this Industry 4.0. Another name that you may have seen is smart industry. So that's Industry 4.0. And the reason for this convergence can be found in the evolving platforms and business needs that we see nowadays. Traditionally, IT and OT networks were strictly separated. So OT segments were also usually air-gapped, which means that no communication was possible from or to these networks, and they would be completely isolated. They often still have different teams managing both environments separately, one team for the IT side of operations, one team for the ICS networks. So 2 teams with complete different visions. But the boundary between these 2 is slightly fading. So nowadays we see a major change in this behavior. OT elements once were not connected, and now it's hard to find any OT elements which are not connected to a network. And the reason for this can be found in 4 main drivers. The first one is the ability to monitor and control physical devices remotely. Remotely can be from a remote operation centers, but can also be from a cloud platform. And this remote control also applies to a vendor needing access to their systems, for example, maintenance. Another driver that we see is the injection of IT-based technologies. So basically, it drills down to edge computing. We are now analyzing the data we get from our industrial control systems right away at the production side of operations. And a good example for this is, for example, machine learning to optimize a process right away. Third one is also a key driver. It is the integration of business processes and their operations sides. So think about communicating product data to IT systems, for example, in order to give the customer the possibility to track the progress of making an order, for example. Of course, there are a bunch of other reasons why you would want to be able to find production data right away in your ERP system, but that's just one example. And the last thing is because machine-to-machine communications have been evolved, and these machine-to-machine applications, M2M, also concern the Internet of Things. so connection with the internet. A scheme of how such an Industry 4.0 network may look like is shown on the slide right here. So at the left bottom corner, we have our OT environment with our OT devices, and they are connected to, for example, on-premise connectors or even to IoT sensors, so the internet. All this data is pushed to the cloud infrastructure, as you can see right here, and this then interfaces with APIs in order to get external data from external platforms, or maybe include the information gathered in CRMs, ERP systems. And also on the right-hand side, you see reporting and the consulting of that information, which is very important. The consulting of that information, the systems that use the information, they are all contained by IT. The OT is the origin of the information. Now, this brings us inherently to, I said it already, IoT. We have not discussed this yet. I think we all know what IoT stands for and what it includes. Think about smart fridges, your internet-connected thermostat, or air conditioning, camera images, which you can consult via an online cloud platform. All these devices are essentially OT, as they operate in the real world based on real world data. But often the terminology is more or less used to reference the appliances we have at home or in our offices. So as IoT operates most of the time in IT networks, essentially the same measures apply as for normal IT networks, as you can see in the last picture. So there they suggest a firewall because you're going to secure internet communication. Of course, firewall is not everything. You will need to change your factory default passwords, update whenever there's a security patch available, and maybe in an ideal situation, completely separate the IoT network from other network segments. If you're really interested in IoT, you can also have a look at Shodan. Shodan is a platform that scans the internet. Basically, he's looking for all the devices which have a public IP. He will scan the public IPs and give you some insights in which ports are open, which vulnerabilities there are, if these are using default passwords and credentials. If you want to have a view, have a look at shodan.io, and there you will find an overview, and maybe you can start playing with what you find. By the way, if we're talking about IoT in OT environments, then most of the time you're going to see the acronym IIoT, which stands for Industrial IoT. So Industrial Internet of Things. Okay, so now that we have had all our terminology, let's look at what our networks look like. I guess that we're all familiar with this one. As you can see, this is a normal, regular IT network. Well, although maybe nowadays I must have added the cloud somewhere, but anyway, these networks are mainly characterized by the TCP IP stack, protocols like TCP, UDP. You can have all kinds of different topologies, but most often will segment devices based on location or purpose. For example, VLAN or subnet for guests, one for servers, one for wired, one for Wi-Fi, and so on. And then we would connect this, we call that the access layer, to the distribution layer, and eventually the core switches of our network, which most of the time link up to firewall. So this is a traditional IT network. Now let's have a look at OT. And when investigating OT design, you will almost always come across the Purdue model. Purdue is essentially a university in the US. They have defined this model in the 1990s. You may come across the name PERA, Purdue Enterprise Reference Architecture. It's basically a guideline with reference of how to segment your industrial control systems networks. And as the arrow indicates, not all levels are allowed to talk to each other. The model is built up out of 5 levels, including 0. 0 is the physical process. So with physical process, we mean these are the sensors, these are the valves, these are the relays, which do something or which register something from the real physical world. Level 1, intelligent devices. So they manipulate those physical processes. They steer them on level 1, for example. You also have safety systems in place, which, for example, if they detect, I don't know, maybe in a refinery, if they detect a gas leak, then all systems will be shut down, something like that. That's level 1. At level 2, we have our control systems. Control systems supervise, they monitor and control the physical processes. So these are the software and the systems, such as SCADA, as you can see, that control the devices that do the job. And level 3, you can see manufacturing, operations, and control. These are the systems that instruct our control systems. They have a global overview of which control systems are in place. Control systems are often mainly specific for specific tasks. And at level 3, we find systems which can steer and instruct multiple control systems. At level 4, you can see business planning and logistics, and that's where we enter IT. So IT, remember, data-based, not with the real physical world. So level 4, there we will have, for example, our ERP system, which gives the assignment to a manufacturing operations system to start producing a car, milk, clothing, whatever. These systems contain all the global knowledge of all the processes in the factory, will be used for billing, etc. So that's level 4. Level 4 IT, everything from level 3 and below is mainly OT, operational technology. We can also visualize this model in a diagram. As you can see, the green level 0, there we have our processes. So robots, actuators, sensors. Level 1, as I said at the end, the safety controls, and also the controls which monitor the sensors and the robots. Level 2, we have the operator interfaces, so the machines that control everything below. And at level 3, we then have our systems, our global systems that instruct our operating systems to start building a car, for example. As you can see, there is a gap between level 3 and level 4, because we said level 4 IT. This is where we don't want any interaction with, for example, the internet, something like that. No, it's really about separation, and the main goal is to separate the IT and the internet, especially the internet, completely from our OT networks. As we've said, OT was an isolated network. It still often is. You don't want these vulnerable sensors and machines to be able to be attacked by the internet. Now, to close the Purdue model, you can ask the question, or at least I did ask myself the question, yeah, what about IoT? Because yeah, in the IoT area, the flow of data is no longer hierarchical, because yeah, it's directly communicating with the internet, and the Purdue model is there to defend us from directly connecting to the internet. So essentially then the Purdue system would be broken and threats could rise because of these direct exposures. There are a lot of data collected at level 1, and by directly sending this to the cloud, you're basically bypassing the segmentation, which is included in the Purdue model. Now, up to now, there are some initiatives, but there is not a one go-to solution which defines, all right, you should go for this, you should do that. I have read an article. The picture from the article is from an interview with the CEO of an edge computing firm, and he said, well, maybe we could introduce an industrial edge computing platform. Of course, he's CEO of an edge computing firm, so of course he will say that you need edge computing, but essentially it is indeed a way to maybe manage the communications, because then you can use that edge computing platform as maybe a proxy to control all the traffic which is going in and out to the internet. Most of the time, these industrial edge computing platforms would be placed at level 3, so not level 1, 2. These are the real sensors, critical processors, safety measures, but at level 3, they can communicate, or they can guide the communication from the sensors below, but maybe also from level 4, which is the demilitarized zone, as we've seen on the previous slide, to the internet. So yeah, this is something we need to think about. There's not a go-to solution right now, but it indicates that we are developing these things. Firms and knowledge forms are thinking about it. So I think that in the near future there will be developed pretty quickly a hybrid model. Now, this was the brief overview of what OT was. We've seen ICS, IoT, the difference between IT and OT. We've also seen why IT and OT are converging. So now let's have a look at OT security. This timeline highlights several significant cyber events between January and June 2022, so the first half of this year. As you can see, since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 24, they have seen activity from several types of threat actors, including hacktivists, state-sponsored ATPs, cyber criminals. Maybe you have heard of the Viper malware, or maybe the Indestroyer 2. Of course, the most common OT attack is Stuxnet. So basically, that was a worm discovered in 2010. And it was delivered on a USB stick, and it was used to send commands to a nuclear power plant in Iran. And so when that USB stick was plugged into the system, it started sending commands to say, hey, you need to heat your nuclear power reactors. And basically, yeah, they heated themselves up, if that's a real English word. Anyway, it shows that OT is a major target for cyber criminals. Now, if we're going to talk about OT security and especially the convergence, because that's how we started, that's why we're doing this webinar, the convergence between IoT and the difficulties that it imposes, then yeah, if you learn about IT security, you will almost certainly come across the SIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality, you want to be sure that you're talking with the system that you're thinking you are talking to. Integrity, you want to be sure that your data is not altered along the way. Availability, you want to be able to reach the person or the system at the other side of the line. With OT, we can maybe reverse the SIA triad and call it the AIC triad. Because with OT networks, availability is on the top of the list. Your systems need to be up, need to be reachable. You cannot have a glitch in the system. You cannot have downtime because, for example, if you're working in a nuclear power plant and the sensors have registered that temperature is too low, then your network goes down, and the power plant still thinks, all right, my temperature is too low, I'm going to heat up, then they can blow themselves up. So that's really dangerous. And that's also the real danger about OT. We're not talking about data anymore. And this can maybe sound silly, but for example, when you have in IT a ransomware attack, then your rent or your data is encrypted. You cannot access it anymore. You need to pay, but it still is just data. We're not talking about lives. With OT, we are talking about lives. We are talking about, maybe assets, equipment, industrial equipment. That's also bad, but yeah, these are just machines. But for example, in a nuclear power plant, if you are able to blow it up, then maybe a whole region with people is threatened. So availability is key. Then we have integrity. Of course, we do not want that the data between our sensors and our systems is corrupted, is changed. And then confidentiality, but availability is key. Last but not least, we can maybe also add security to this. And with security, we often mean physical security. Because, these OT networks, very, very sensitive. You do not want unauthorized people to plug out the Ethernet cable of a sensor. With IT, if someone plugs out the cable of my laptop, all right, that's fine. I will replug it or I will connect to the Wi-Fi. But with OT, that's not the case because your prediction goes down. So therefore, I've also added security as a plus. Now we're going to make the real comparison, and we will do this on I think I've included 5 points. The first one is performance. An IT network, you do not really need real time. It is nice if you have real-time responses. It's nice if your Teams call goes through smoothly, but it is not really necessary. The response must be consistent, but the delay and jitter, they may be acceptable. And that's also why you see that the focus with IT networks is about high throughput. So high throughput is demanded. The reliability of the network is less important. With IT, access control can be implemented to the degree necessary for security. With OT, it should be strictly controlled, as we've indicated at the previous slide, so the physical security. So with OT, as you can see, OT often is using RTOS, real-time operating systems. So the data which they use also needs to be real time. It's very time critical. High throughput is often not essential. OT traffic is really boring because OT traffic often is just a 1 or 0 switch, a switch on or off, maybe a number indicating the temperature that has been read from a sensor, but it's not the real sexy data. So therefore, high throughput is often not essential. But delay and jitter, on the other hand, is often totally not acceptable. If we have a look at availability, we've already said it. Availability is key with OT. With IT, all right, we don't like to reboot our laptops if an update must be done, but if it's like that, all right, we can live with it. The same with servers. Back in the days, rebooting a server, domain controllers was a really big issue, but nowadays these systems can handle a reboot. So this can often be tolerated. With OT, that's not the case. With OT, if you have a factory running 24/7, your processes need to be available all the time. So this also indicates that often we will have a look at redundant systems in OT networks. You cannot just patch a system. And that's also what we often hear. So IT teams and OT teams, well, IT and OT is often managed by two different teams. The IT guys don't trust the OT guys because the OT guys do not like to patch, or they need to wait for months, maybe a year to be able to patch a system. And the OT guys don't trust the IT guys because the IT guys just reboot whenever they want, every week. So this is a really big difference in thinking. But it is very important. You cannot restart an OT system right away. It must be planned in advance. And also the last point, high availability requires exhaustive pre-deployment testing. If you want availability, these systems are so well tested. They are designed and built for only a single purpose. And it's really important that they do that just right. So they are extensively tested. Then risk management. If we talk about what can happen between IT and OT, what are the differences? With IT, you need to be sure that your data is where you want it to be. You need to be sure that this is not altered along the line. But fault tolerance, as you can see, is less important. If you have downtime, for example, your mail appliance goes down for 5 minutes, who cares? If it goes down for a day, then you will care. But 5 minutes is not that bad. But OT guys cannot imagine a downtime 5 minutes when this is not scheduled. So that's important. With IT, you just delay your business operations. With OT, you just stop your production. Sometimes if a sensor is not coming through, it can stop a whole line, or maybe it can even destroy a batch that you are creating because you're not working with the right data. So fault tolerance is essential. And the major risks, well, besides non-compliance or environmental impacts, maybe a valve has been opened, which pours oil into nature, I don't know, or maybe your systems are breaking, they go down because you blow up a nuclear power plant, for example. System operations. So IT uses typical operating systems like Linux, Windows, Mac. We all know them. Upgrades are straightforward. They can be automated. They can be pushed via a system. With OT, that's not the case. Don't think, yay, it's how do they call it? Patch Tuesday, I think. Hey, we're going to patch our systems every Tuesday, every week. No, that's not possible with OT. And OT, yeah, why is this not possible? Because often they are using proprietary OSs. These do not have security capabilities built in, or maybe they are using very old systems. So when you're doing a software change or maintenance on an OT system, it's often something that you need the vendor for, or a specialized team to do this, to change your systems in order to not cause any disruptions. Resource constraints, this is minor one. I think we already know this IT. We have laptops with very, very powerful processors, RAM memory. It's easy to install an EDR client on a laptop. They can handle it. With OT, that's often not the case. With OT, for example, these devices or systems are really, really built for that own specific purpose. So little memory, little CPU, maybe I have already read some articles on the internet saying that they could bring down a sensor by doing a ping sweep, for example. So just by sending an ICMP ping message, they could bring that down, because basically they were triggering a buffer overflow on that sensor, and it could not handle the traffic. So they only have enough memory to support what they are built for, and therefore it's often not possible to just install an EDR or an antivirus client on the system to manage and secure the devices. Communications, IT standard TCP, UDP, OT also uses serial Modbus. We also have indicated TCP IP because a lot of systems are now making the step to the TCP IP stack with convergence of OT and IT, but a lot of them are still using proprietary protocols. And these OT networks are often complex, ring topologies and whatever topologies, so they often require expertise of control engineers. And this is last one, components, which is also quite important. With IT, yeah, my laptop is 1.5 years old. I know after 3 years, I can buy a new one, or maybe 5 years. So they are updated frequently. They can run the latest OSs. With OT, that's not the case. With OT, if it works, it works. And yeah, you're not going to fix what's not broken. So these systems, they have a lifetime of over 10 to 15 years. And sometimes, for example, if you're using Windows 2000 systems in your OT environment, yeah, there are no updates anymore. So that's also important, that you need to know that often a lot of these systems cannot be patched anymore, and they will remain inherently vulnerable to exploits, and you need a system which protects them from that, especially when you're converging IT and OT and granting access to IT networks like the internet on your OT networks. Yeah, and then this is a minor one. Components can be isolated, remote. Think about, for example, windmills at sea. Yeah, you're not going to take a boat, rubber boat, and just change it. So this can sometimes also be a burden. But these are the main issues that we see when securing IT or OT networks. So old systems, but very reliable. Reliability is key. It's not easy to install an agent on them. You need to have maintenance windows. So there are a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. Now, what can happen? And we've already seen it a bit while discussing the risks of an OT breach. So human damage, environmental damage, equipment damage. How can this be done? By taking control of your switches. And with switches, we mean the switches which switch, for example, a valve on the factory floor. We can also do that by interrupting or corrupting the data flow. If you have, for example, a virus or malware that can alter the data, change the input read on a sensor before it reaches the other side, yeah, then you have a big problem. Configuration changes also happen. So some malware is focused on creating a backdoor to do something else on the system. This is often done with vulnerabilities. And yeah, in the end, you're going to compromise the safety of people and things because, again, OT is operating in the real world. This is a report from Fortinet with some key findings of the current state. What do I want to highlight about this? That security incident response time is key. So if something goes down on your factory floor, it's very important that it's solved right away, very quickly. Second one, 13%, only 13%, this is a report from June 2022, indicate that they have visibility of all OT activities. That's very low. You cannot secure what you do not know. So therefore, yeah, I think that this is a major one that we should have a look at. And the third I want to highlight, role-based access control. This is also something that's really important. Again, OT networks, very critical, only allow access to those who need access, and the whole zero trust paradigm certainly applies to OT networks, but only 32% is convinced that they have the right RBAC in place. So, and this is almost a wrap up. So cybersecurity, how can we defend our OT networks? Well, therefore, we can use the Nist cybersecurity framework. Basically, it's also applicable to OT's networks. So first of all, you need to identify what you have. You need to know what is there. You need to know what is communicating with what. You need to do risk assessments. Second, protect. So access control, training, maintenance, things that you put in place in order to prevent someone from accessing your ICS by doing something malicious. And in the middle, we see detect. Detection, and it's important that detect is indicated. Often in an OT network, we will not respond right away. So instead of using intrusion prevention system, we're often going to use IDS, intrusion detection systems, because these networks are really critical, really vulnerable. You do not want to stop traffic between two sensors if they need that input. And then we have respond and recover. You need to have a planning in mind. What if something happens? How do I mitigate it? How do I communicate to the outside world? And how am I going to recover from maybe a security incident or something else? So you need to have a plan in mind. You can also divide this in 5 levels, and depending on the level, you can see where you stand in your journey of securing your OT network. It's divided by people, processes, and technology. I will not go over them one by one, but it shows that, for example, here at developing, it's very important that you focus on risk management, create policies, processes, have documentation available. At stage 3, you really need to be confident about your documentation. You need to have policies in place, responsibilities for. Then you have an InfoSec committee. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you know it. With the identify, and this is where, yeah, I'm not going to tell you that we're going for sales talk, but I just want to give you a mapping of what could be used for what. For the identify, I said it's really important to identify what you have in your network. There you need to have a system which can map your networks. For example, Nozomi is very good at it. It's a system that by passively scanning the networks will monitor the communication between systems, and with that information can create a topology and visualize which systems are communicating with other systems. For example, Exonius is also such a tool. It will not provide visibility in how your network looks like, but it will identify assets in your network. So you need to have a tool in place where you can see what is in your network, what you need to protect. And for the protection, let's focus on access control, but also the border between IT and OT. I said, yeah, I'm Fortinet guy, so I've created my example with FortiGate, but it can be with any firewall vendor. Your firewall vendor will be, or your firewall will be the one who grants access to your OT network. And it's very important that those firewalls, and they are nowadays, or they have these capabilities nowadays, are aware of a user and a machine. You need to know who is connecting. For example, Wayne is connecting through the SSL VPN to access imagine that this is my OT network. Is it certainly Wayne? You can check it with multi-factor authentication. But you also need to verify maybe that he's using the right applications. So these things are really critical nowadays if you want to grant access to your network. Who's connecting? What is he doing? So only allow applications which you want to allow. So for example, FortiGate can detect which applications are being used. This is also important when doing IPS detection, or maybe even SD-WAN between different production sites. So your firewall needs to know what is happening, and not only on the network, but also with the user and the machine that he's using. On the detect side, yeah, I said we're not going to stop traffic because we do not want it. We often just want that we know that something is happening, and if we have investigated and we think that indeed something is happening, it's not false positive, then we can maybe shut down our plant in a controlled way. Here we have indicated Nozomi and again the FortiGate. Both are very good at detecting attacks in your OT networks based on signatures and IDS intrusion detection. This is my last slide, I think, and this is a kind of summarization of where and what can be secured in an OT network. It's also yeah, it's made up by Verve, and it's also defined in terms of timing, and also in terms of the level that you're going to tackle. So inventory, as we've already said, is key, but often then the next thing that you want to have a look at, it's patching. Patch your systems, have a patching plan in mind, know when you can do these patches, and this is also very important. We have not discussed this, but monitoring and log analysis. You need to have systems available, and this can be a SIEM, or if you are in the Fortinet network, Forti Analyzer, which combines all the data from your networks and which gives you visibility in your network and what is happening. So logging is also very important. Network segmentation, we've already discussed that. So there are many things that can be done, but yeah, I think you feel what are the basics: inventory, patching, logging, segmentation, identity and access management, these kind of things. And if you go further, then you can go to network anomaly detection, maybe implement an NDR, network detection and response system, like for example Vectra. But of course, these are the more last steps. Start at the beginning, start at the left-hand side of the screen. And I think that's it for today. I went a bit over time, but I think it's all right because we're still within the hour. If you have any questions or you want more info, don't hesitate to contact myself or Quinten, the BDM for the Nozomi networks. Want to thank you for joining. Yeah, if you have any questions right now, just put them in the chat. I will have a look at it. But right now, no questions. All right. So thank you for joining. And yeah, maybe we see each other next time. Thanks and bye-bye.